You're listening to Consulting Logistics, presented by Aborn Co. I'm your host, Courtney Conyers. Today we have Dan Burke, Aborn Co.'s carrier sales manager, and we're going to talk a bit about, his background, where he came from, what he studied, and how he got involved in supply chain. So Dan, hey, how's it going?
Good. How are you doing, Courtney?
I'm good. Thanks for joining us here.
Thanks for having me.
So let's just get into it. Tell me a bit about where you're from, where you grew up, how many siblings do you have? Just give us everything.
So I grew up in southern New Hampshire, and I went to high school in Lawrence, Mass. at Central Catholic. And when I was there, one of my teachers said something that really stuck out. It was one of my football coaches, and he said, guys, if you ever get the opportunity to go to school somewhere else, you got to go there, like outside of Boston. I was like, okay. And I took that to heart, and I went out to Cleveland, and I loved my time there.
Oh, wow. Okay. So where'd you go to school?
I went to John Carroll.
Awesome. And what did you study when you were there?
I was a marketing and logistics double major.
Okay. All right.
I cared more about the logistics courses.
Yeah.
Don't tell my marketing professors I said that.
Okay. I was a communications major, so I'll just pretend to ignore that. So I've never really heard much about a logistics program. At BU, I didn't hear too much about it. So tell me a bit about that. What kind of courses did you take? What was your favorite class? What did you learn?
Yeah. So we had an intro level supply chain where it just kind of broke down what you were going to see throughout your time. And it kind of just touched on it. I had an international logistics class. I had an operations management class. I had one of my favorite classes was transportation. Ultimately ended up there. And then just the capstone was a lot of fun.
So did you always know you wanted to go into logistics? Was that a plan you had before college, or did you kind of find your way there?
So when I was applying to school, I knew I wanted to go into the business program, but I didn't know what I wanted to do. I had this idea that I wanted to be an accounting major, and I was like, I was weary on it. And then somebody told me, if you want to be an a CPA, you got to get your master's in order to take the test. Yeah. And I was like, that's not what I want to do right away after school. So I talked to my advisor, and she's like, well, take a logistics class, see if you like that. And at the time, the UPS commercial, that's logistics, was running big, and it was in my head. And I was like, all right, let's give that a try. Let's find out what logistics actually is.
So when did you graduate?
2015.
Okay, so I'm interested to hear about the role that technology played when you were learning about supply chain and logistics, because obviously things go so fast in the tech world now. What were you taught?
I was not taught a lot about technology because it wasn't really, in 2014, 2015, it really wasn't the most important thing in logistics. Right. It was starting to become something they were implementing, but I mean, a lot of logistics was in the Stone Age at the time.
And so fast forward to now, what's changed?
So when I first started after college, trucking companies would keep track of their hours of service, how many hours they're allowed to drive, on a piece of paper. Like that is alone is mind-boggling. Like, carriers can fudge that however they want, because it's literally, what time did I decide I started driving today? And so in 2017, in December 2017, a law came across that everyone who drove a truck had to have an electronic logging device, which would automate, okay, truck started up, it started moving, it's at this time, and you were only allowed to drive your hours of service.
Right.
You couldn't fudge it.
Yeah, there you go. That's a little better, I think.
Yeah.
So let's talk about after you graduated. What was your first role out of college?
So up until starting at Aborn, I worked at a company called C.H. Robinson, and I was in the carrier sales side, working with trucking companies to find them freight, working with shippers to find them trucks.
And so was that out in Cleveland?
Yeah. So I started off in Cleveland. I was there for 2.5 years after college, and then I decided I missed my family, and I made a move back to the New England area.
Okay. But back while you're in Cleveland, did you have any big projects you were working on while you're there that you really liked? What was the highlight of your time out there?
Yeah. So when I was in the Cleveland office, we had a really diverse group of customers. One of the projects I worked on was helping to build the Mercedes-Benz stadium in Atlanta prior to the Super Bowl.
Cool.
Another project I worked on was when the Republican National Convention was coming to Cleveland. I helped bring some fixtures into the hotel, and we got that built. And it was a gigantic project, and there were a lot of headaches at the time, but it was really rewarding in the end.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds it. So, all right, you're over at Cleveland, then you come back to Boston. Can you talk to me a bit about just how freight operates differently from, the Northeast to the Midwest? Like, what's different? It's got to be different, right?
Yeah. So in the Northeast, I mean, if you think about, living in New York, living in Boston, it's so much more expensive.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter where you live. And so, companies have to pay their employees way more to live, to work in this area. And they also have to pay way more for the land that they're putting their plants on. So a lot of manufacturing happens out in the Midwest. It happens out not on the eastern part of PA, like out in the Harrisburg area. And because land's cheaper, labor's cheaper. And so as a result, there's more opportunities out in the Midwest.
Okay. So after C.H. Robinson, you're here in Boston and you come to Aborn. Can you tell me a bit about what's different in your role here? Kind of what does your day-to-day look like? Just talk to me a bit about that.
Yeah, so I operate in a really similar role, except now I have some leadership opportunities. I run our brokerage, and I'm starting that from the ground up. It was something that when I was talking to Jill and Steve about, I was super excited, and I still am. But yeah. It's been an awesome opportunity here, getting to get my hands wet. And
yeah, so just tell me a bit more about brokerage, because I mean, my background's in communication. I again knew nothing about supply chain and logistics when I came into this. Like, I just don't know enough about it. So just tell me a bit about more if you can.
Yeah, so I mean, it's a really exciting field. If you're young, it's one of those things that, when I graduated college, my biggest fear was finding a boring desk job and just punching the 9 to 5, 8 to 5, whatever the hours were clock. And that's not what freight brokerage is. It's fast paced. It's loud. It's fun. It's different than what I thought I was going to be doing after college. And I'm very thankful for that.
Oh, awesome. That sounds fun. Yeah, I also did not want to be, stuck at a boring job 9 to 5, just staring at an Excel sheet all day. So it's cool. So speaking of just kind of like young supply chain professionals, how do you think education is going to reform based off of what's going on in the coronavirus pandemic? How are they going to look at supply chain differently in these curriculums? It obviously has to change. They have to prepare these students for a workforce post-pandemic. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, and I think one of the things that they'll take a couple case studies away, and one of them I would think is Amazon. Amazon was so prepared for this, like with their next day service, with their own trucks. They weren't reliant on now we have a truck shortage, because we just have drivers that are understandably afraid to drive in the middle of a pandemic.
Yeah, no, it's a nightmare. So you think just more case studies, and then next time around, we'll be prepared for something like this?
Yeah, I mean, I think you'll see more case studies, and I think you'll see, people look at their supply chains differently. Like classic example is Ford and GM. When they initially, in March, when the shutdown happened, they looked at their supply chain and they realized, well, we might have to add a supplier or two, but we can go from making pickup trucks and sedans to making PPE masks and whatnot. And, that was one of the coolest things to me. I ultimately did a project on the two of them in one of my master's classes. It was really cool to learn about.
Yeah, crazy how fast that all happened.
Yeah.
So switching gears a little bit, but staying on the same track, what would you tell young professionals and students who are looking to get into the supply chain workforce? Like, what do you wish you had known, or what advice would you give them?
I would say my advice is to go and get yourself exposed to every different asset or every different facet of supply chain. It's such a broad field. I mean, you have the procurement side, you have the transportation side, and I mean, even within transportation, you have 5 different modes, and it's each mode's different, and even within the modes, they break down even more.
Yeah. I mean, that was just something that struck me, is how many components go into this that I had no idea, like, about. I'm still learning. I'm still trying to make my way through and fully understand what's going on here. But it was fascinating to me just how much you don't know about supply chain and all the different components that go into it. So just going off of that, what do you wish you knew before you started a career in supply chain?
I wish I knew how important communication and relationships are. Somebody said this to me, 4 or 5 years ago, and it really hit home as I continue my career. Keep track of the relationships you make here because you're going to need them later.
Yeah.
And, the amount of people that I've talked to from college, from my previous job that, I met here on day one that didn't work here, they're really crucial and they've helped us out a lot so far.
Yeah. I feel like that can be good. Like that can be said for, anyone's career, right? You have to maintain relationships. You have to keep up your network. And it's just so, so important. And it doesn't go away no matter what industry you're in. Like it's always going to be important. So I completely agree. So I just entered the workforce. I just graduated back in May. And, I'm very comfortable with technology, but I feel like in the supply chain and logistics world, there has been this sudden shift towards technology and so many people are uncomfortable about it with it. What's your experience been like with that? Just tell me a bit about that.
Yeah, as somebody under 30, I pick up on technology fairly quickly and it's definitely been an upper hand. And so, my advice to anybody that's still in school is, learn about the technology that you're going to be coming into. And maybe there is a technology that you see an opportunity with. There's plenty of people that make money every day building new technology.
Yeah, right? Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. I loved having you here. It's been super fun. Where can people reach you if they want to?
Dan at Aborn Co. or, reach out to me on LinkedIn.
Awesome. Great. Well, thanks so much again. And have a great day.
You too.
Thanks.
And that's our show. Have a question that we didn't address in the interview? Leave a comment and we'll be sure to talk about it. In the meantime, subscribe to the channel to see more content like this. Thanks for watching Consulting Logistics.